Badgers basketball brings back a familiar name, why I like the move, but why some people have some concerns.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? I am Ryan Harings. This is the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, giving us a slice of your time. There's nothing more valuable in life than time. So thank you so much for making this your first listen every day. And thank you for all the everydayers that are there with us every single day as we build this community. Y'all are so appreciated. You have no idea. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Sports are amazing, and sometimes FanDuel can help you spice it up a little bit more. And right now, all customers get a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's talk about it. We haven't talked basketball in a minute. I'm excited about this move. So Greg Stiemsma, former Badger player, 2004 to 2008, has been hired as the director of player development. This is a guy who left Wisconsin, and he's really spread his wings a little bit, right? From a career progression standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from a player development standpoint, he's kind of left the Wisconsin bubble and played overseas, right? Years in Turkey, he's played in Korea, so he has international experience from the coaching or from the playing standpoint. Played in the NBA, played for believe it's 4 years in the NBA, 2011 to 2015. Played with the Celtics. That's where he started his career. By the way, little. I think some people know this. Greg Stiemsma's first career basketball game, his NBA debut with the Boston Celtics, he had 6 blocks. Like that's insane. The dude was like the Kembe Mutombo out there. The clip's out there. Go YouTube it. Greg Stiemsma NBA debut. He's got 6 blocks, including a couple at the rim where he just denies. So really fun little anecdote there. But yeah, so you're talking about a player who played in Europe, played professionally, played in the NBA at the highest level, was able to carve out a few years there as well, played with guys like Kevin Garnett, among others. So that kind of thing has to rub off on you. But here's where it starts to get interesting, right? The NBA stuff is great. You want somebody on your staff that has played at that level because the people that you're surrounded by always influence you. People have gravity. And if you share a locker room with Kevin Garnett, who is one of those maniacal competitors in the history of, forget basketball, in the history of sport, that dude, I have some fun stories with him we're not going to get into, but that dude was maniacal. A little bit of that has to rub off on you, right? So he's played with elite players. He's played internationally. But then he went to the Minnesota Timberwolves and got to work in their player development, right? 2019 to 2021, he was in the Minnesota Timberwolves player development room. So now you're talking about real chops, right? Coaching the elite of the elite of the elite of the 1% in basketball and working with them in player development. And then you look at that Minnesota Timberwolves team, he had the ability to work with some real dudes, right? I know this a couple of years ago, but they were starting to build that. And he was part of the beginning of that rebuild, right? He was in that room and part of that culture. And then in 2021, he went to work for the San Antonio Spurs. This is the exciting part. The San Antonio Spurs are right now, Popovich is like the closest parallel you can think of is Bill Belichick with the Patriots. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's one I'm missing, but his coaching tree is ridiculous. Greg Popovich has seeded the NBA. I mean, he's like a super spreader, right? But not in diseases, in like coaches and masterminds and NBA people, NBA influential coaches and player development guys. You look at the people that have worked with Greg Popovich. It's guys like Coach Buds, right? Is Popovich guy. Mike Brown, Quinn Snyder, Mike Malone, Monty Williams. These are all guys who have brought teams to the NBA Finals or close. Terry Porter, PJ Carlissimo, Mike D'Antonio. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how many people he's influenced. So you're taking somebody from that Spurs culture that's been there for a couple of years. Stiemsma got there in 2021 into their video room, got promoted, started working with player development. Like, this is I know there's some concerns. I'm going to get to that in a later segment, but just do a blind resume. Okay, take the name Greg Stiemsma out of it. Take the name Wisconsin connection out of it. Just look at the blind resume with Greg Stiemsma, right? NBA career. Carved out an NBA career, played professionally overseas, was working in the NBA with the Minnesota Timberwolves for multiple years in their player development, and then got brought on by the San Antonio Spurs, basically the lighthouse of NBA cultures, right? The place that the program that every other team looks to outside of maybe the Heat or Golden State. It's the Spurs. It's that Spurs culture. It's that Stone Mason culture. Everybody looks to that. And now you have a guy from that room, that culture, that was working under the umbrella of Greg Popovich, was working in an environment that has fostered so many great basketball minds that have left there and done incredible, amazing things. I just don't think you look at the blind resume, and if you had pulled that resume from a pile and said, would you like this guy as your director of player development at University of Wisconsin men's basketball? I think most fans would be like, yeah, please. Can we? Is that a thing? Can we do that? Absolutely. I think it's a great hire. And low key, there's a couple other interesting little things here. I'm going to get into the Wisconsin connection in a later segment here. And does Greg Gard need to look outside of his circle a little bit more? I think that is a fair point to acknowledge. Basically, he has filled the staff with players or coaches or people who have either played at Wisconsin, coach at Wisconsin, or have a connection to the state of Wisconsin. That's a very fair point, something I want to dive into in a second. But there's a little interesting segue here, too, that you're bringing in a guy for player development that played overseas, while also stating that you have kind of started to look towards recruiting international players, right? Lance Randall being brought in. There's that big, as an assistant coach, right? Lance Randall was hired this offseason. A big part of his experience and his connections are overseas. They're international. And now you're bringing in a guy who's played internationally. I'm not saying that that's the reason you do it. I think there might be a little bit of a benefit there if you're trying to find more international players. I mean, they did this offseason, right? If you're trying to find more international players, having a guy who's played internationally for several years in a couple different countries. He's played in Korea. He's played in Turkey. I think that's probably going to help translate some of that. I think it's a nice get up. He's going to understand what some of the leagues are over there. He's going to have some connections over there as well. I'm sure that's going to help in the recruiting front. But then again, like you're probably not really going to go wrong hiring out of the Spurs culture. So I like the hire. I think it's a good move. A part of this that I really like too is this is a new position, right? This position, director of player personnel, didn't really exist last year. So this is Greg Gard expanding the staff, trying to continue adding pieces to make this ecosystem work better, to make the ecosystem a little stronger. Kirk Penny's another guy like that they've added into this mix. You got to like that to some degree, is that he's not standing pat, right? Greg Gard is not standing pat. He's trying to improve on the margins. He's trying to get better at player development. I like it. I just really like this move. I think it's a really solid hire. And I like the fact that we're adding in spots that we necessarily didn't have. Now, you can make the argument, well, why didn't we have this role for the last 4 or 5 years? That's a pretty fair point. But now we do. And I think that is something to be excited about for Badger fans. You can look at some of our bigs, and you can question a little bit of the development at times, right? Has Steven Crowd gotten a lot better the last several years, right? Did Tyler Wall get a lot better? You can look at some of those guys. Look at a Hodges. Has he gotten better? Or Marcus Silver, right? Some of the 4s and the 5s on the roster. Did not John Lure. Who was the guy? Nate Reavers. Did Reavers really get better? So now you're bringing in a post guy as a developmental guy. Maybe this is a way to help develop those post players a little bit more as well. So I like it. I think it's a move that's going to pay dividends. I think it's an underrated and maybe an overlooked move that could really help the Badgers develop some post players and help foster some of those international connections. I think it's a good move. Good job, Greg Gard. Congratulations to Greg Stiemsma. I like it. All right, we're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show, and then we're going to come back with, is Hunter Wohler, Ricardo Holman the best defensive back duo the Badgers have had in the last 15 years? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's friends of the show over at FanDuel, the ultimate spot for all your sports betting needs, all your sportsbook information, FanDuel.com. This is where we go on the Locked On Network. Futures, parlays, spreads, teasers, whatever you want. Baseball is in full swing right now. If you're into the Brewers action, whatever it is, it's a great time to get over FanDuel. The user interface is fast, simple, easy to use. The ultimate in sports betting is over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. There's a reason we use it, right? Also, futures coming up for college football. I've said it a lot. That Badgers over is going to hit. If you want to get in on that, it's a great time. Go over to FanDuel.com. Again, is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. It's what I use because it's fast, it's easy, it's simple. You get your payouts. It's quick to figure out what you're trying to do. It's not confusing. It's simple. Whether you're a seasoned gambler or a first-time person, please do it responsibly over at FanDuel.com. Okay, I wanted to talk about this. So college football, CFP 25, EA Sports is coming out, right? And this is not going to be a huge segment on that. We've talked about it a little bit. We're going to have a big roster breakdown on it when it comes out. I think we're going to do some streaming shows too, where maybe we play some games against people. But 2 players from the Badgers make the EA Sports top 100: Ricardo Holman and Hunter Wohler. Ricardo Holman comes in at a 91 overall. Hunter Wohler comes in at a 90. It got me thinking, when is the last time the Badgers would have had 2 90 type players in the secondary? Right? Is this the best defensive back duo the Badgers have had in 5 years, 10 years, 15? I don't know. Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Now, I would also say I would probably have their rankings maybe reversed. I think Hunter Wohler is more of a complete player, but I love both. They're both fully deserving of 90-plus grades. I think you can make the argument they should even be a tick higher, but love it. Now let's start looking back at previous Badger secondaries. Have we had a duo this good? I don't know. So I was dug into the history books a little bit, went into some research mode. 2018, who would you rather have? Hunter Wohler, Ricardo Holman, or 2018 Nick Nelson, Natrell Jamerson? Hunter Wohler, Ricardo Holman, or Nick Nelson, Natrell Jamerson? Now, Nick Nelson was a 4th-round pick. Total dude at cornerback, big physical guy, not blazing speed, but very physical in the run game. Came over from Hawaii, really good player. Natrell Jamerson was a burner. 4th-round pick of the Saints, I believe, ran probably a 4.37, 4.35, an absolute burner. I would probably still take Hunter Wohler and Ricardo Holman over that duo. But I'm not sure. I think that's a close one. But I'm still going to take Hunter Wohler, Ricardo Holman over Nick Nelson and Natrell Jamerson. All right, so let's go to 2017. Jamerson and Derek Tyndall. I'm taking Holman and Wohler over that. I think Holman's a better corner than DT, and I think Wohler's a better safety than Jamerson. I don't think that one's that close. I think the Nelson Jamerson one's closer. 2016, you have Dakota Dixon, Sojourn Shelton. You're not taking that over Hunter Wohler and Ricardo Holman. Listen, Dakota Dixon was a really good player. Physical, sound. He's probably a 4.65 guy. Like, it just is what it is. Had a big pick, obviously, to seal the LSU game. Had another big pick. Was it against Minnesota that he sealed? Trying to remember where he got a safety, I think. No, that was Illinois, man. I am mixing games. But you're not taking that over Hunter Wohler and Ricardo Holman. Let's go to 2015. Would you take Michael Caputo and Tanner McAvoy over Hunter Wohler and Ricardo Holman? 2015. Hunter Wohler, Mike Caputo. Oh, Tanner McAvoy, Mike Caputo. McAvoy had like 6 picks that year. McAvoy was a ball hawk. McAvoy was an elite athlete, carved out a role with the Seattle Seahawks. 6'5", 6'4", really rangy, good ball skills. I'm still taking Hunter Wohler over him because McAvoy couldn't tackle. I loved McAvoy. This team could so use a Tanner McAvoy as like a deep, rangy center fielder that could go, and sideline to sideline and really contest those deep vertical passes. He didn't tackle. Hunter Wohler's a better player. Will he get drafted? I mean, I'm not talking NFL draft stuff here. Hunter Wohler's a better player. So I'm taking Wohler and Ricardo over Caputo and McAvoy. Then you get in a dry stretch. I mean, 2014 had Desmond Southward. You're not taking him over these guys. 2008 had Jack Ikegwonu, but he didn't really have a great running mate. You probably got to go back to like 2001, which is Jamar Fletcher and Jason Doring. Would you take Hunter Wohler and Ricardo Holman, or would you take Jamar Fletcher and Jason Doring? You got to take Fletcher probably, right? You got to take the Fletcher-Doring combo. Now, Fletcher's the best player probably out of that group. Fletcher was a ball hawk, 1st-round pick at corner, elite awareness and recognition skills, crazy quick athleticism and awareness with jump routes. I think you got to take that. Jason Doring was like the prototypical strong safety. We hit like a dump truck, probably ran a 4, maybe a 4.7. I don't know. He probably ran faster than that. I hope Jason Doring doesn't see that. Come track me down. He probably ran like a 4.65 or something. Would you take that combo, I'm really interested in what people would do on this one. Would you take Jamar Fletcher and Jason Doring or Hunter Wohler and Ricardo Holman? I think you got to take the Fletcher-Doring pairing. But if you want to make the case that Hunter is better than Doring, I could see that. And then Ricardo had 7 picks last year. The bigger point I'm making here is it's been a long time since the Badgers, I think, had a duo like this in the secondary. And then you look at the pieces around them. You look at the Austin Browns. You look at the Nizier Forkrins. You look at the young talent in Xavier Lucas, Emilio Agard. It's been a while, right, since the Badgers have had talent at this in that back secondary that have been worthy of 90 type grades on an EA Sports game, right? I'm excited for it. This coaching staff has added young talent. Both these guys are holdovers from the Paul Chryst era, so you have to give credit there as well for finding and developing Ricardo Holman, and then Hunter Wohler staying home. It's a really good duo, and I think when you start looking back over the last 10, 15, 20 years, it might be the best duo in 20-ish years at Wisconsin in the secondary. Definitely let me know if there's someone else that you think I'm missing, but I think they may, in the last 20 years, they may only be there with Jamar Fletcher and Jason Doring as like those top duo groups that you'd have to kind of pick and choose between. Who else would? This is just a guess now. Those are the top 2 ranked Badgers in the EA Sports 25 game. Who do I think EA Sports will have as the next 3 highest Badgers? I think it's going to be Jaheim Thomas. I think it's going to be Will Pauling. Will Pauling's definitely going to be in that group. I think he's the easy one. Who are the other 2? And if that list is already out there, I haven't seen it. I only know of Ricardo Holman and Hunter Wohler's grades. I think EA Sports' next 3 highest players are going to be Will Pauling, Jaheim Thomas, and I think it's going to be Chez Malusi. People think that's crazy. I think he's going to get like that veteran bump. They don't always ding players for injuries really well in EA Sports and video games in general. So I think it's going to be those 3 next. I can't wait to play this game. I'm so excited about it. We have a league going on the Discord. If you're interested, come join. We'll put the invite out there as well. All right. We're going to take one more quick break for our friends of the show. Come back, and we're going to talk about, does Greg Gard need to hire outside of his circle at least a little bit more? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. What is going on, everybody? Thank you for making this your first stop every day. Really do appreciate y'all. So I mentioned it in the first segment. I like the Greg Stiemsma hire. I like it. I think it's good. I think it's smart. I think it makes sense. I think he's qualified. I think if you looked at the blind resume of Stiemsma, you would say, yeah, that really makes a lot of sense to bring him in. However, then you start to zoom out and you see Lance Randall, Wisconsin guy, Joe Grabenoff, Wisconsin guy, Kirk Penny, Wisconsin guy, Greg Stiemsma, Wisconsin guy, Greg Gard, Wisconsin guy. You start to see kind of a trend of it's a lot of the same voices. It feels very Paul Christian. This is something Justin and I were talking about. And that's a valid point. It is valid. And I want to say kind of 2 sides on this. The first is, I don't think this gets talked about enough. This is something I've brought up, but I haven't talked about it a lot. I don't think people fully understand the damage that Alonzo Tucker probably did when he stabbed Greg Gard in the back, right? I don't think Greg Gard is going to hire outside of his trust circle probably anymore because of that. Fair or not, I think that damage was done, and now he's going to hire people he knows aren't going to try to turn the locker room against him. Okay, and that's allegedly what Alonzo Tucker did. He tried to start basically a mutiny. So I don't think none of this is surprising to me. When I coached, I didn't coach for a long time, obviously, but when I coached in college, I remember my head coach said one of the first things during the interviews, you got to be loyal to me, right? And my head coach was great that I worked for. He was awesome, but he was right. Like, loyalty matters, buy-in matters, and hiring from people that you know, it matters. And I'm not going to crush Greg Gard for that. However, I do think you run the risk of having too many of the same voices, too many of the same perspectives. And I wish Greg Gard would, for one of these hires, have gone outside and maybe found a different perspective. Like, Greg Gard at times is so locked into the way he's always done things. That's never going to change. And it's sometimes hard to evolve if you keep bringing in people that have only always done it that way as well, right? It would have been great to see maybe I like the Stiemsma hire, but the Lance Randall hire, I would have maybe loved to have seen an outside voice there. I really would have loved to have gone out and found a young, upcoming, out of Wisconsin, has never been tied to the program, aspiring, young assistant coach with recruiting chops and recruiting ties that comes in with some new ideas and some new thoughts. I would have loved that. I do think it is a bit of a weak spot on Greg Gard's staff. I do think it is a bit of a blind spot for him. I understand where some of it's coming from. Like I said, I think the Alondo Tucker thing, the echoes of that are still reverberating throughout that room, are still reverberating throughout the Kohl Center. I think that's very true. However, you got to get some new thoughts, right? You have to evolve and continue growing. I think at times it's hard to do that if you are only hiring people that have come from this same shared fabric. Now, where the Stiemsma thing is different, and this is the point I've made, is he was a Wisconsin guy, obviously played here, has that connection to Gard, but then he went out and he did his own thing. He played in Turkey. He played in Korea. He coached for the Wolves. He coached for the Spurs, right? So he has a Wisconsin tie, which means you're going to get somebody who loves the program, who understands the nuances, who knows where the locker rooms are, who cares. He gives a crap. That matters too. Like, don't forget that. People with a tie to the university also give a crap about the university. It matters to them. That's important. But he's also done other things. So I think you are going to get a guy with some different perspectives in the room. I think that's important. So I do like the Stiemsma hire. Yes, I would love Greg Gard to go out completely outside of the comfort zone and bring somebody else in that could potentially challenge some established norms. But I don't think he's going to do that because I think he got burned a little bit hiring a guy who had been at the program, obviously had ties, but that he probably didn't fully know how he would be as a coach. And I think he got burned a little bit there. So he's treads a little carefully now. That's his prerogative. It's his program. We'll have to see how Greg Stiemsma plays out. We'll have to see how Lance Randall plays out. I'm going to definitely give them both the benefit of the doubt. I'm a little higher on the Stiemsma hire, full disclosure. But I'm definitely going to give Lance Randall the opportunity as well to see what he does. And with that, let me know. Let me know what you think. Does Greg Gard need to go outside of that comfort zone, or do you like these hires? What do you think of the Greg Stiemsma hire? On Wisconsin, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk tomorrow.